America is a vast landscape of paved roads and bright city lights. We tell ourselves that every corner has been mapped, every species cataloged, and every mystery solved. We find comfort in the known. But there are pockets of this country where the maps seem to fade, and the rules of reality begin to bend. In the deep hollers of Appalachia, something metallic and terrifying fell from the sky, traumatizing a group of locals for generations. Along the icy banks of Ohio rivers, police officers, men trained to deal with facts, found themselves aiming their weapons at something that evolution forgot. In the tropical heat of Puerto Rico, a predator emerged that drained the life from the land, leaving behind no blood, only fear. From the haunted stretches of Chicago's Archer Avenue to the dense claustrophobic woods of Salt Fork State Park, the stories we are about to explore are not merely campfire tales. They are documented encounters. They are police reports filed in the dead of night. They are the trembling testimonies of people who went looking for the truth and found something looking back. Tonight, we peel back the layers of 5 distinct American legends, 5 entities that defy explanation, 5 reminders that when you stare into the dark, you are rarely alone. Welcome to the Shadows. The date is September 12, 1952. The location is the small, quiet town of Flatwoods in Braxton County, West Virginia. It was a clear autumn evening, the kind where the sun dips below the Appalachian hills and leaves the valleys in twilight. At around 7:15 p.m., Edward and Fred May, along with their friend Tommy Heyer, were playing on the local school playground. Their game was interrupted by a spectacle that would change the town's history forever. A bright, pulsing red light streaked across the sky. It wasn't an airplane, and it moved too slowly to be a meteor. The boys watched, mesmerized, as the object appeared to crash or land on the steep incline of a nearby farm owned by G. Bailey Fisher. Panic and curiosity mixed in equal measure. The boys ran to the May household to tell their mother, Kathleen May. Seeing the genuine terror and excitement in their eyes, she decided to investigate. She gathered the boys, a local National Guardsman named Gene Lemon, and 2 other children. Leading the group up the darkening hill, Lemon brought his dog along. As they climbed the rough terrain, the air grew heavy. A thick, pungent mist began to settle around them. It didn't smell like burning wood. Witnesses later described it as a metallic, sulfurous odor that burned the eyes and the throat. As the group crested the hill, the darkness was absolute, save for the flashlight carried by Gene Lemon. His dog, which had run ahead, suddenly came sprinting back down the slope, tail between its legs, whimpering in pure animalistic fear. At the top of the ridge, they saw a pulsating ball of fire, approximately 50 feet to their right. But it was what stood to their left that froze the blood in their veins. 2 small, beacon-like lights glowed in the darkness. Gene Lemon turned his flashlight toward them. The beam cut through the fog and revealed a towering entity. It stood perhaps 10 feet tall. Witnesses described a face that was red and blood-like, surrounded by a pointed hood shaped like the ace of spades. The body appeared dark and metallic, with what looked like a pleated skirt or plating covering the lower half. It had no visible legs, appearing to float just above the ground. The creature hissed. It began to glide toward them, not walking, but drifting. The eye beams pierced the fog. The group didn't wait to see what it wanted. Terror took over. They fled down the hill in a chaotic scramble, screaming into the West Virginia night. The group reached the safety of the May house and immediately called the sheriff. By the time law enforcement arrived, the glowing object and the creature were gone. However, the air on the hill remained thick with that sickening metallic smell. The horror of the Flatwoods Monster didn't end that night. In the days that followed, several members of the group, particularly Kathleen May and the young boys, fell violently ill. They suffered from throat irritation, vomiting, and convulsions, symptoms consistent with exposure to mustard gas. A local doctor referred to their condition as shock, but the physical symptoms suggested something toxic. Skeptics claimed they saw a meteor and an owl perched on a branch, the flashlight creating an optical illusion. but the witnesses stood by their story until their dying days. They knew the difference between an owl and a 10-foot-tall mechanical nightmare. To this day, Braxton County remembers the night the sky fell and something walked out of the fire. In the folklore of Ohio, few creatures are as bizarre or as stubbornly documented as the Loveland Frogman. While the name sounds almost comical, the encounters associated with it are anything but. The legend begins in May of 1955. A businessman, whose name has been lost to history but whose report remains, was driving through Loveland, Ohio, near the Little Miami River. It was late, roughly 3:30 in the morning. As he approached a bridge, he saw three figures standing by the roadside. Thinking they were people, perhaps stranded motorists or locals, he slowed his vehicle. As his headlights washed over them, he realized his mistake. These were not men. They stood between 3 and 4 feet tall, walking upright on two legs. Their skin was leathery and wet, their faces distinctly amphibian, with wide, slit mouths. The businessman claimed one of the creatures held a device, a wand or rod that emitted sparks. He sped away, terrified, reporting the incident to the police. For nearly 20 years, the story was dismissed as a drunk driver's hallucination, until the police saw it themselves. Fast forward to March 3, 1972. Ray Shockey, a respected police officer, was driving his cruiser along Riverside Drive in Loveland. The roads were icy, forcing him to drive slowly. Suddenly, something darted across the road in front of him. Shockey slammed on his brakes. The creature was illuminated by the cruiser's high beams. It was crouched like a frog, but stood up on two legs as the car stopped. Shockey described it as having leathery skin, roughly 4 feet tall, weighing maybe 75 pounds. It stared at the officer for a fleeting second before scrambling over the guardrail and disappearing into the dark waters of the Little Miami River. Officer Shockey was visibly shaken. Other officers on the force noted he was a sober, serious man, not prone to flights of fancy. But he wasn't the only one. Just 2 weeks later, Officer Mark Matthews had a similar encounter. He saw what he thought was an animal carcass on the road. As he stepped out to remove it, the carcass stood up. It was the Frogman. Matthews drew his revolver and fired, but the creature vaulted the guardrail and vanished. The testimony of 2 police officers lent a gravity to the Loveland Frogman that few other cryptids possess. These were men trained to observe and report facts, yet they described something biologically impossible. In the years following the 1972 sightings, investigations were launched. Officer Matthews eventually tried to walk back his story, suggesting it might have been a large escaped iguana that looked distorted in the shadows. Yet the local residents weren't convinced. Sightings have continued sporadically over the decades. In 2016, 2 teenagers playing Pokemon Go near the river claimed to have captured a photo of the creature, a large bipedal frog with glowing eyes standing near the water. Whether it is an escaped exotic pet, a misidentified animal, or something ancient lurking in the Ohio mud, the Loveland Frogman remains a cautionary tale. Be careful what you look for near the water's edge. Before it became a pop culture punchline or a confused coyote in Texas, the Chupacabra was a source of genuine, paralyzing horror. The legend began in earnest in 1995 on the island of Puerto Rico. In the municipality of Canovanas, farmers began waking up to a gruesome scene. Their livestock, goats, chickens, sheep, were found dead. But this wasn't the work of wild dogs or jaguars. The animals weren't torn apart or eaten. They were intact, save for 2 distinct puncture marks, usually on the neck or chest. More disturbing was the state of the carcasses. They were completely drained of blood. Not a drop was found on the ground surrounding them. It was as if a surgical vacuum had been used. The locals began to whisper of El Chupacabra, the goat sucker. Panic spread through the rural communities. People stopped going out at night. They reinforced their fences, but the predator seemed to bypass locks and wire with ease. The physical description of the original Puerto Rican Chupacabra is vastly different from the hairless dogs often seen on American news. The witness who provided the most detailed account was Madeline Tolentino. In 1995, she claimed to see the creature through a window near her home. She described a bipedal creature, standing about 3 or 4 feet tall. It had dark, large eyes that slanted upward, similar to the gray aliens of Folklore. But this was beastly. It had spikes or quills running from the top of its head down its spine. Its limbs were long and thin, ending in sharp claws. It moved with a hopping gait like a kangaroo, but possessed an intelligence that felt distinctly predatory. This description matched the injuries found on the animals: a creature with hands to grasp and a mouth designed to extract. As the reports piled up, over 150 farm animals killed in Canóvanas alone. The mayor of the town, Jose Chemo Soto, even organized volunteer hunting parties. They scoured the tropical brush, armed and terrified, looking for the impossible. The hysteria in Puerto Rico reached a fever pitch. Stories circulated that the creature was a genetic experiment gone wrong, escaped from a U.S. government facility in El Yunque National Forest. Others believed it was extraterrestrial, a pet left behind by visiting UFOs. Eventually, the sightings in Puerto Rico began to dwindle, or perhaps the creature moved on. Reports began popping up in Mexico, and later the southern United States. But as the legend migrated, the description changed into the canine version we know today. However, those who lived through the terror of 1995 remember the truth. They remember the silence of the mornings, the pale, bloodless bodies of their livestock, and the description of the spined, red-eyed devil that hopped through the jungle. In Puerto Rico, the Chupacabra is not a myth. It is a memory. Chicago is a city of broad shoulders and deep history, but down Archer Avenue, the history refuses to stay buried. This stretch of road, winding through the southwest suburbs past the Willowbrook Ballroom and Resurrection Cemetery, is home to perhaps the most famous ghost story in America, Resurrection Mary. The legend dates back to the 1930s. The story goes that a young girl, Mary, had spent the evening dancing at the O. Henry Ballroom, later the Willowbrook. After an argument with her date, she stormed out into the cold night, deciding to walk up Archer Avenue. She never made it home. She was struck by a hit-and-run driver and left to die on the roadside. Since then, dozens of men, mostly young men driving alone, have reported the same encounter. They spot a young woman walking along the shoulder of Archer Avenue in the dead of night. She wears an old-fashioned white party dress and thin dancing shoes. Concerned for her safety, the drivers pull over. The interaction is always eerie in its normalcy. The driver asks if she needs a ride. She nods, gets into the passenger seat, and says very little. Witnesses describe her as beautiful, but very cold to the touch. She smells faintly of flowers and damp earth. As they drive up Archer Avenue, passing the darkened storefronts and streetlights, the driver tries to make small talk. She answers vaguely. But as they approach the massive iron gates of Resurrection Cemetery in Justice, Illinois, she suddenly becomes alert. "Stop here," she commands. The driver, confused because there are no houses around, pulls over. He turns to look at her, to ask why she wants to be let out at a graveyard, but the seat is empty. The door never opened. The car is still locked. Resurrection. Mary has simply ceased to exist, vanishing into the air she came from. Skeptics dismiss these stories as urban legends, variations of the vanishing hitchhiker trope found all over the world. But Chicago's legend has physical evidence. In 1976, a passing motorist saw a girl locked inside the cemetery gates after closing time. She was grasping the bars, her face pale. The motorist called the police. When officers arrived, the girl was gone. But where she had been standing, they found something that defied explanation. 2 handprints were burned into the bronze bars of the cemetery gate. The metal was warped and scorched, as if touched by intense heat. Workers tried to clean the marks with blowtorches and wire brushes to remove the impressions, but the hands remained. Eventually, the bars were cut out and removed, but the story was cemented. Mary isn't just a story. She is a restless spirit forever walking Archer Avenue, trying to get home. When people think of Bigfoot, they think of the Pacific Northwest, the towering redwoods of Washington and Oregon, but the Midwest has its own giant, and it is far more aggressive. They call it the Ohio Grassman, roaming the deep forests of eastern Ohio, particularly around the Cuyahoga Valley and Salt Fork State Park. The Grassman gets its name from its reported habit of building small, hut-like structures out of tall grass and nests. The legend goes back to the mid-1800s, where settlers reported a wild man terrorizing families and stealing food. Unlike the shy, elusive Sasquatch of the West, the Ohio Grassman is described as a heavy, imposing figure, standing 7 feet tall with dark, matted fur. It doesn't just flee from humans, it seems to tolerate them only until they cross a line, and then it reacts with rage. The epicenter of Grassman activity is Salt Fork State Park, a sprawling 17,000-acre wilderness. It is here that campers and hikers have reported the most terrifying encounters. It often starts with a smell, a stench of rotting garbage and wet dog. Then comes the sound. Witnesses describe deep, guttural howls that vibrate in the chest, unlike any coyote or wolf. But the Grassman's signature behavior is rock throwing. Campers have reported large stones raining down on their tents in the middle of the night, thrown with impossible force from the darkness of the tree line. One famous account details a family fishing trip where a large bipedal figure stepped out of the tree line, screaming at them. It wasn't a roar of an animal. It sounded like a distorted human scream. The family fled, leaving their gear behind. When they returned with park rangers, their equipment was smashed. Is the Grassman an undiscovered primate? A surviving pockets of Neanderthals? Or something more supernatural? Hunters in the region speak of the silence that falls over the woods right before a sighting. The birds stop singing. The crickets go quiet. The Ohio Grassman represents the primal fear of the Midwest. We look at the cornfields and the patches of woods between our highways and see empty space. But something is living in those spaces. Something that builds nests, watches us from the tree line, and waits for the sun to go down. The next time you are driving through rural Ohio and you see a tall patch of grass swaying when there is no wind, keep driving. From the chemical fogs of West Virginia to the iron gates of a Chicago cemetery, from the tropical predator of Puerto Rico to the river monsters and forest giants of Ohio. These legends span thousands of miles, yet they share a single, chilling thread. They are reminders that we are not the masters of this domain. We build our cities and pave our roads, trying to push back the dark. But the dark pushes back. The Flatwoods Monster, the Frogman, the Chupacabra, Resurrection Mary, and the Grassman. They exist in the periphery of our vision. They are the glitches in our reality. Are they flesh and blood? Are they spirits? Or are they manifestations of our collective fears? Perhaps the answer doesn't matter. What matters is that tonight, somewhere in America, someone will look out their window and see something they cannot explain, and their story will become the next legend. Thank you for joining us in the shadows. If you have an encounter from your hometown, leave it in the comments below. We are always listening. Sleep well, if you can.